session which is conducted by me and Isuru. And today we are going to do a presentation about the code review and data testing for QA. So here is the agenda for today. It is starting with the traditional QA versus next era QA and how code review can help with the QA and what is traditional code review, and talk about the differences between black box and gray box testing and the differences between code review and testing, and talking about what are the benefits and the difficulties of code review, and how can QA participate in code review, and talk about the code review considered part of the QA. And the second part of the presentation, we are going to explain what is data testing in the context of QA and why data testing is required for QA, and finally take an example and we are going to explain how data testing is conducted. So that's the agenda for today. And before I'm moving to the today's main topic, I'm going to explain what are the differences between traditional QA versus next era QA. And mainly first I'm talking about what are the traditional QA. Actually, it's mainly relies on the manual testing, mainly focused on the manual testing, and it has very limited test coverage. It means like it is very time consuming thing, and it we cannot execute the all possible scenarios within the because of the human limitations, and also it has very slow feedback loop. And talking about the next era QA, it's totally focused on the automation thing, and it has very comprehensive test coverage. It means all these things like script writing, execution, all these things are being automated, and there are no any human limitations. So because of that, it has very rapid feedback loop. Actually, by adding this slide, I just wanted to know the code review is kind of a next era QA technique. So that's the idea about that slide. And I'm going to talk about the how code reviewing can help with the quality assurance. Actually, like this presentation will help you to realize what are the importance of the code review, and as QA engineers, how we are going to engage in with the code review process. And the most people have the misconception that code review is a kind of technique only responsible for the development team, maybe functional consultants. Actually, it's not that true. For QA engineers and also the product owners also have their at least with development knowledge, they also can participate in the code review process. So that's the idea about that slide. And next, actually in the latter part of the slide, we are going to explain how QA engineers are going to participate in the code review process. But here I'm going to explain what is traditional code review process. So, in generally speaking, the main goal of this code review is like identify early detection of bugs and also improve the code quality by ensuring that the code is in the cleanest possible state. And in this diagram, you can see the code review process starting with the developers. So the developer are the persons who are responsible for the creating a new code, maybe doing existing changes in the particular source code. So after development is done, it's moved to the testing phase. You all know we call that dev testing. So in dev testing, developers are going to ensuring that has no any major issues, maybe all the functions are working as expected. So after that, it moves into the code reviewing phase. Maybe senior QAs or maybe like architectures or senior developers are going to review this particular code, and they are going to give their feedback into the developers, and again the developers are going to do any changes in the existing code based on the reviewer's feedback, and after that it integrated to the versioning control systems like Git. We call that the processing checking process. So after that, it storing the code repository. So this is a normal traditional code reviewing process. The most of organizations are using it. And actually, this is kind of an additional slide. In this slide, I just wanted to know the code review is kind of a gray box testing technique. You all know, you all are familiar with those testing things, so black box and gray box. So the black box is only we are focusing on the inputs and outputs, and we no need to have any much knowledge about the internal coding structure. But gray box testing is the combination of the black box and white box testing. So if as a QA engineers, if we are willing to working with the like code driven things, we should have at least limited knowledge of the internal working. So in this slide, I just want to give the idea about the code review is kind of a gray box testing technique. And the main topic differences between code review and testing, code review and normal testing. So code review evaluates the quality and the coding standards of the particular source code, but testing verifies the functionality and the behaviors of the particular software application. And the code review mainly focusing on the coding structure, maybe readability, maybe maintainability, or any potential issues. But testing involves the executing the code with various inputs and scenarios to identify bugs and ensure that the functions are working as expected. And code review normally occurs before or during the development phase, but normal testing was probably happening after the development phase. So those are the main differences between code review and testing. And this is a very important topic. So now I'm going to explain what are the benefits of the code review, starting with the improved code quality. It's like the code review is a very important thing to improve code quality by early detection of bugs. Maybe you can identify security vulnerabilities, so maybe like any potential issues, or those problems can identify by reviewing the code. Actually, you all know that the code review is taking place in the development phase. So if we can identify bugs in the early stages of the life cycle, so it may very cost effective, and also we can reduce a lot of time during the testing phase. So and also we can we can deliver our software product on date with the tight deadline. So that's why we can say code reviews can help to improve code quality. And talking about the improved team building activity, actually the code review things are going like knowledge transfer sessions, maybe feedback sessions. So most of the senior persons, maybe senior QA, senior developers, so architects are going to review the code that written by developers and give their feedback into the juniors. So juniors can learn a lot of things from that senior persons, and it helps to improve the knowledge, and also it helps to collaborate with each other. And talking about the greater code readability, so as the example, newcomers are joining to the particular product. So if the code is in the cleanest possible state, and if the code is in the understandable way, so every developer can easily understand and easily work with that. So this also very advantage of that code review process. And enhancing code maintainability, it's the same as the before. So code review can ensure that we can easily update and maintain source code for the future. And talking about the improved learning, so the code review is like a learning opportunity. So developers can learn a lot of things from senior persons, maybe the seniors are using different coding standards, different approaches. So maybe they are using like some tricks to identify early bugs. So all these things can learn the junior person from senior. So those are the main benefits of the code review. And next thing is difficulties of code review. The first and main thing is time and resource constraint. So the code review is process. Sometimes it may be like a very time consuming thing and also resource constraint. It means like so the organization face some challenges when allocate the appropriate expert for that reviewing team, because the reviewers should have some kind of like they should well experienced, maybe there should be their knowledge and well expert. So sometimes the organization can be challenged to find their particular resources. And talking about the personal preferences, so we all are human and we all have different thoughts. So the reviewers also use different coding standards. Maybe they are using different approaches. So in that situation, maybe in the code review, sometimes it may happen like some disagreement or any like conflict during the code reviewing thing. And talking about the miscommunication, actually the same code is reviewing by the multiple reviewers. So in that situation, it may happen like miscommunication thing. And 5% for the right job means we should have we should have assigned the appropriate expert for that revealing thing. And the limited focus. It's like we cannot be able to ensure we can identify all the issues in the particular source code by reviewing the code. We cannot say we execute like we identify all the aspects of the particular source code by reviewing the code. So those are the main difficulties when we are facing during the code reviewing thing. So that's all from me, and over to you.
Thank you, Dehemi. That was very insightful and a lot. So let me walk you all through the rest of the slides. Okay, so I will explain how QA can participate in code reviews. So basically, code review is a process that comes under static testing. Right? It's mostly into static testing in QA. So why we use code reviews is, as Dehemi mentioned, you can conduct code reviews for early detection of bugs, which can be helpful for our testing in our next life cycle. So basically, also now if you talk about how QA can participate in code reviews, is because testers can have a solid observation skills that ensure that the code follows all the essential protocols. So so for us, if I say for us, for QA testers, in order to participate in a code review, so there are a couple of few tips that we need to know. So first is like you need to try to understand what each code section is supposed to do, because we come from a not a development background, so we don't know what when you read about code, you don't know what the code does. So we just want to try to understand what each code section does. So that is why to understand this, you need to be much mindful of what you do. So and pair testers with experienced employees in reviewing code for mentorship. So when I say experienced employees, it's like you're pairing a QA tester with maybe a lead level in development. So because then they are able to actually explain what this block of code does. So like you can from the explanation you can see when you read this code, maybe you don't know the exact process how it works, but when you think about it, you might know like when you read the code what it does, the outcome of it. So and also to encourage the learning process. So it is understandable that if QAs cannot make sense of anything in the code first, they might need to put in some time and effort, because like I said, we don't come in from a coding background. I mean, like we don't come from a development background, so that in that case, to understand code review, it might be tough for us. So know this, we might have to put in some little bit of extra effort and time to understand and to read the code and to review the code from our side. And so this is the diagram which I think Dehemi mentioned this part of this diagram. So I will show you how the QA is participating in this code review. So as you can see in this diagram, you have the developer, you have the code, you have the test code review as the usual process it works, and they checking the code and the code repository. Now, our QA code review person involved in this would be like after developers have done their code review. So QA resource also can code review, do a code review on that code. So in that case, we need to pair up with some experienced employees, like I said, tech leads or architect. We need to pair with them, and we need to ask like how this code works in order to for us to give feedbacks or comments to QA. So that can be a little bit tricky, like I mentioned. We need to have some. We need to know those tips and tricks before we know this. So in that case, to do this code review, we should be much familiar what this each section of code block does. So that is why after they are done with the code review, we can also go to code review, pair with experienced employees, and then provide our comments and feedbacks back to the developers. So because QS mostly have the idea of what the domain wants, like what the client expects or what the domain is mostly about. So in that case, we can when we do some code review, we can see that okay, there can be some things missing in the code. Like we can say that this function needs to be included in that code. Like we are not saying what the function is, we are just saying that this needs to also be part of the code. So so that is actually the diagram how QA code review will involve in this basic traditional code review. So okay, so moving on. So okay, this is a question that I'm asking. So our code review is considered part of QA. So if in my opinion, so technically it's not a part of QA, but code reviews, yeah, like I mean in the slide it's mentioned, code reviews are not typically considered part of the QA, but they do play a vital role in ensuring software quality. So end of the day, we are supposed to deliver a product that the client expects and the client is happy when we deliver this product. So this is an additional technique or a process that we need to involve in our QA life cycle, which will ensure that this what we deliver it on a perfect product. So they are primarily conducted by developers to review and evaluate code quality, while QA focuses broad activities such as testing, requirement analysis, and ensuring overall software quality. So on this, QAs are mostly into testing and gathering the requirements and trying to write down test cases or identify a test design. But developers are the ones who review the code and code quality. So imagine if you combine both QAs and developers, QAs know the domain, developers are doing the code. So combining that will let you deliver a product that has lesser amount of bugs, and it's a product that the client is really happy about. So that is why we involve code review into QA. So however, code reviews can contribute to software review by enhancing code and reducing the likelihood of bugs. So as I mentioned, our main primary goal is to reduce the likelihood of bugs in our testing phase. So in order to do that, before we go into our testing phase, we can do a code review with the developers, combine them and do a code review, and then we can enhance the code to make it process perfectly. So then in that case, it will be when it comes to our testing phase, we will have less likelihood of bugs, and then we will also deliver a good standard product that the client wants. So at the last point, I would like to say effective code reviews can contribute to overall software quality and support the goals of the QA process. So like I mentioned, it's helpful. So moving on. So this is another topic keeping apart from the code reviews. So what is data testing in the context of QA? Yeah. So when we talk about data in the context of QA quality assurance, data testing actually refers to specific activities and techniques that are used to ensure the quality and accuracy of data within the application. So this point is simple, straightforward. So data is something which needs to be accurate in any system. So in order to see that accuracy and to maintain that quality is proper in that within that application, we need to do techniques such as data testing. So here are some key aspects of data testing in QA. So most of the key aspects are data validation. So data validation is basically this relates to the correctness and integrity of the data. So it's mostly focusing on validating the data against these rules and standards as well, and also the business requirements. Data integrity. So data integrity is, if you talk about data integrity, it mostly focuses on accuracy of the data, the consistency, the reliability of data. So this can include testing data, dependencies, and data integrity constraints. So that is why data integrity is also most of a key aspect within this database. Data transformation and migration. So this point, in the latter slide, I will also show an example of this when it comes to the latter slide of the presentation. So, but if you talk about data transformation and migration, it's mostly testing the proper transformation, conversion, and migration of data from one system to another. So when I say system, it's like it can be two different databases. So let's say you have a database, you have SQL database, and you have another MongoDB or some database DB. So in order to migrate this data, we need to be accurate that whatever comes from the earlier DB is also go to the next DB with accuracy. So that I will explain in the later slide. So and the other one would be data security and privacy. So this is mostly more of a key aspect in data testing, because we need to maintain certain standards and also respect the security and privacy of the data that we do data testing, because we can't compromise some of the data within database. So on that point, it's mostly related to we need to ensure that proper access controls, data masking, and also data regulations such as GDPR is adhered to. So basically, those are respected too. And performance and scalability of data operations. So when we come to that point, it's mostly when you do data testing, we can have bulk of data. So in that case, the performance and the scalability of these operations that we do might change time to time. So we need to also look into performance and scalability of data operations. So for example, when we are doing a data migration, that is on the earlier point that I mentioned, when you do a bulk data migration to another DB, we need to see how we access the insertion of records or the retrieval of records. So that is related to performance. So we need to know whether this data, when we do this data operation, we need to know that which tier we have the databases and how we are maintaining. And also data recovery and backup. So data recovery and backup is mostly like we need to know if we transfer any data from any environment to another environment, or if it's a normal data testing, that we need to be able to back up this data or recover this in a future stage, because just keeping the data won't be a problem, because we need to also make sure, in case if we want to pull that data to our side or we need to back up it, we need to make sure that the DB or the techniques that we are using are up to standard, and we need to also adhere to all the rules and regulations. So those are mostly the key aspects of data testing in QA. And so I will tell you why data testing is required for QA. So like I mentioned in the earlier slides, it helps to ensure that the data within an application is accurate, reliable, or processed correctly, which will lead to a better user experience. So, and a more robust, dependable system. So, why QA needs to do data testing for several reasons. So, those are mostly ensuring data accuracy, validating system functionality, mitigating risk, compliances and security, like I mentioned, and also the performance. So on that part, so ensuring data accuracy is like as QAs we can prevent issues and could rise from incorrectness and inconsistent data. So in order to avoid that, we need to verify data inputs and outputs within the system performing data validation. Validating system functionality is basically QAs can verify that the system operates as expected, because we are talking about system functionality. So we need to verify that the system operates as expected when this data is processed and configured. So yeah, so that is system functionality. And also when you talk about mitigating risk, you can as QAs you can detect and resolve data related issues early in the QA process. So when you find the data issues in the early process, we can identify the problems before they impact the users of the system, because this can be also in higher DB level. So for example, production DBs, we need to mitigate the risk before the users get to know that there's an issue with the in their data. So and compliances and security, this is particularly important because this can be because there can be sensitive data such as personal information or financial data. So those we cannot be compromised. So we have to maintain that security for these data should be kept tight. So that's why we need to maintain compliance and security. Performance and scalability, like I mentioned, for QAs, we can analyze how the system handles large volumes of data. And depending on the outcome, the QAs can identify the bottlenecks and optimize performance when it comes to the optimized performance, and ensure that the system handles the increased data load. So when you do a migration, for example, like I mentioned, we need to identify as QAs, we can identify whether this migration is going smoothly or not. So in order to do that, we need to check what are the bottlenecks, what are the issues that we are facing during a migration. So yeah, mostly to that. So this is this slide I mentioned how QAs are going to involve into this specific reasons on data testing. So like in the earlier slide, I mentioned that I will show an example on the data testing. So this is of how data testing is done. You can basically migrate data from environment to environment. So in that case, it can be two different database structures or two different tables. So when you do a migration, we have to make sure that all the table names, all the values within that first database records are being transferred to the second database. So in order to do that, we need to validate each and every field within that database. We need to see what the data type is within that database, within that table. And for certain things, now we might not see these. If you take a table in a database, we might not see all the columns into the front end. So in that case, there are certain fields that just change based on the data which is being sent to the other side. So for example, if you take a certain field in a database, in a table, that can be inserted only if two other fields of the database are being added. So you can't manipulate that data. So it runs on a process. So For example, some of these data that I shown in here, these some of the data you can't actually insert from one database to another database. So these are things, some of the data, it comes based on a process, or a plugin or based on a process. So it changes from time to time. So, but we need to ensure that when you do a proper migration, we need to ensure that whatever is in the previous version of the DB should be gone to the second version of the DB. So, in order to ensure that, we need to, like I mentioned, we need to see all the fields, we need to see all the data, we need to see all the data types, we need to see that we have not missed any of the data. So, these are typical normal example of how data testing is conducted. So that concludes my presentation. So thank you very much. So,
okay, guys. Thank you, Isuru and Dehemi, for the insightful session.
Yeah.
So the information very helpful related to data testing and how code review is important and how we can back them up. So involved. So thank you very much again, Isuru and Dehemi, for your time. Yeah, great. Thank you.
Thank you, Manish.